Good night, everybody. It's station with Rick Footwork. We just had a bug there. If you guys are seeing me and hearing me, let me know that we're having some difficulty there. If you guys are seeing me, let me know. Seeing that issue there, I'm not sure what's going on, but I'm seeing that the ring. Are you guys hearing me loud and clear? Let me know. Are you hearing me loud and clear? Keep sharing the link, everybody. We'll try to see. My technical guys are here. We're gonna see. I'm not seeing anybody. Are you guys hearing me? Let me know. Somebody say yes, loud and clear. Okay, Jacqueline, loud and clear. Guys, work on that. Everybody, share the link. Get into all your Guyanese groups and share the link. We have a bombshell topic to discuss tonight. Bombshell topic to discuss tonight. So everybody, get in all your Guyanese groups. I'm seeing that again. On email, I'm not sure what's happening there, but share the link, everybody. We will not be deterred tonight. This is important. Share the link. Not sure if the lights are too hot here. Can we move this light back? I think the lights are affecting. The heat from the lights are affecting the camera. Let's see if that works. Pull it back a little bit. These lights are hot. Everybody, share the link. Get into your Guyanese group. Share the link. Everyone, share the link. Each one of you, I see what, 1,700 people. Share the link to everyone. Everyone, share the link to 20 other persons. Call up all your relatives and friends. Text me, let me know where you. Not sure what's the problem. I think it might be the internet. But if you guys are hearing me, okay. Good. Share the link, everybody. We'll be right back in 60 seconds. Share the link, everyone. Good night again, everybody. This is Rickford Burke in New York. Welcome to Conversation with Rickford Burke. Again, we have a very important topic tonight. I'd like everybody to share the link. Keep sharing the link. Not enough people here yet, so this is, like I always say, this is crucial information. We have an ethnic press, all surrounds the PPP, and they suppress the news. They suppress information. And if we don't use social media to share information and knowledge, then we will be shut out. There's a vast conspiracy against non-PPP supporters in Guyana, even in the diaspora. So this is our medium of getting information out to the people and to the world, getting the truth out, So everyone share the link. All right. So 2 things I want to do tonight. I want to discuss with you the letter that was sent by 85 Guyanese organizations and prominent individuals in society, members of parliament, mayors, regional chairmen, business persons, professionals, attorneys, former magistrate. I want to discuss that with you tonight. And then find a way to share my screen. Not sure. I'm not sure if I'm doing it the right way. Good. Share screen. Share screen. Share screen. I think I'm doing it right there. I am not doing it right. Okay, let me try again. Oh, there we go. All right. So I'm sharing the screen now. I am not doing it right. But this is the letter. This is the letter. Let me see if oh, good. I think I got it there. I got it there. Good. So share the link, everybody. Keep sharing the link. Important information. All right. So all along, when people were complaining about discrimination, when people were complaining that there's racial discrimination, when we were convening all these forums in New York, having all the marches, people come from Guyana Verify, the government was like, oh no, there's no racism here. It was like Bob that bad. Bob that Bob. For those of you who are younger, during the Iraq War, when the US Army had landed in Baghdad to kick out Saddam Hussein out of government, we need something like that in Guyana probably. The Minister of Information, a general, he's a propagandist. He stood on the streets of Iraq. He said, there are no Americans. And while he was, American tanks drove past him. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. That was Irfan Ali. That was Bar Jagdev. That was Gail Teixeira. That was Mark Phillips, a house slave. And that was Anil Nanlal. Recently, when we had the meeting in New York on the 30th of October, to discuss transnational crimes, which is the government using the Guyana police force, using intelligence services, harassing members, attacking members of the Guyanese community who live here. Anil Nanlal says, there's no racism. He doesn't know what we're talking about. Elected officials work this salt should verify before they talk. He said, it's a few fringe, 17 or 18 of them in New York, Bark and the crew in New York, who are just crazy mad people talking that there's no racism in Guyana. He said racism doesn't exist. Matter of fact, he said, what have we done for Guyana or for African Guyanese? They said the government is doing more for African Guyanese than ever before, any other government. No racism. Well, now we have representatives of half, more than half, about 60% of the population, verifying that there's racism. Verifying that's racism. So let me start out by reading the cover letter. Honorable Kamala Harris, Vice President of the United States. Dear Honorable Kamala Harris, attached you'll see a letter signed by several notable Guyanese social activists concerned and appalled at the many ills perpetuated against the citizens of our country. The situation might not have been so horrendous, but for the fact that it is engineered and fueled by the national government, the group of people vested with the power and the tools to protect the rights of the citizens. To say that Guyana is on the brink of civil unrest is mildly describing the situation. We have traveled to many villages within the 10 administrative regions of Guyana and spoken to affected residents. Consequently, we have documented what we presume to be the central concerns of the people selected from a mass communities to give them an insight into the prevailing ills affecting our people. We believe that the government is deliberately setting the stage for civil unrest, an occurrence that may only serve to compromise our fledgling democracy and create chaos and loss of innocent life. We are therefore appealing to you, kind ladies and gentlemen, of course this letter also went to Congress, to use your high offices to influence the requisite changes that can only serve to rectify the situation so that all Guyanese can once again enjoy peace, goodwill, and the patrimony of our dear land. Thank you all, and may God continue to bless you in your daily efforts to make the world a better place. Signed, Leon Saul, Secretary. And of course, is Mr. Saul is Secretary for an organization that was just created called Institute for Action Against Discrimination. Now, what does the document say that was signed? It says, statement by organizations and individuals condemning acts of racial discrimination and victimization by the PPP government of Guyana. And it reads, it's a long letter, I might not be able to read all aspects of it, but I'll go through the key areas. We, the undersigned organizations and individuals, are gravely concerned about the escalating social, racial, economic, and political injustices leveled at African Guyanese and other citizens who do not support the governing People's Progressive Party regime of Guyana. These injustices have moved beyond geographical borders to Guyanese living in the diaspora, particularly those who vociferously denounce these atrocities. The situation has recently ballooned to unimaginable proportions, with the PP government and their agents extending their malice beyond Guyana's borders and into the diaspora towards President of the US-based Caribbean Guyana Institute for Democracy, Mr. Rickford Burke. The Guyana Police Force has twice recently issued malicious wanted bulletins for him within a 12-month period, devoid of lawful justification. Undoubtedly, the rights of citizens and the rule of law are under siege in Guyana. And it must be noted that these threats are vile in nature and pose a danger not only to Mr. Burke, but to humanity everywhere. Happily, Guyana's oil and gas wealth has placed the country among the world's fastest growing economies, which have attracted multinational and transnational corporations, the likes of Exxon and Hess, among others. Sadly, The vile acts of discrimination adopted by the government have shut out a large portion of the citizens from enjoying the benefits of the nation's oil wealth and national patrimony. Let me pause there. The government has said that is not true. The Prime Minister put out a letter saying it's not that true. Every single thing is truth. They put out wanted bulletins to me with no evidence that I committed a crime. And if I committed a crime, I live in New York. New York police and the federal law enforcement officers would arrest me. People don't get away with crimes in New York. But they want to intimidate us and control our speech. So they're putting out these wanted bulletins. The most fundamental rights, the letter continues, the most fundamental rights, freedom of expression and association, are blatantly assailed on a daily basis by the government. Economic genocide is now prevalent. Those unwilling to toe the line in adherence of the regime's autocratic governance are ostracized, marginalized, and victimized. Private businesses are persecuted for advertising with media houses deemed unsupportive of the government. Further, organizations that rely on state subventions, grants, and contracts are punished and defunded if perceived to be non-compliant with the PPP's political objectives. Most reprehensibly, the PPP government abuses the powers of the Guyana police force. Everybody keeps sharing the link. As well as the criminal justice system, which they use as their enforcement agencies for political vendetta, victimization, and revenge. That is absolutely true. All the people from GCOM, Rickford Burke, Paul Slow, everybody, using the criminal justice system for revenge. They also abuse the courts to obtain the most repugnant forms of political and personal recrimination. That is true. Up to now, they don't have one conviction of all these black people they arrested. The concomitant result is pervasive intimidation and coercion of the masses struggling for economic survival to either be forced handouts. The government has unashamedly graduated from attacking Guyanese in the diaspora to attacking elected officials in New York. On October 30th, 2022, 21 Guyanese organizations held a Guyanese diaspora town hall meeting where several elected US government and law enforcement officials discussed transnational repressive crimes against Guyanese in the United States orchestrated by the PUP government. The meeting was addressed by New York State Attorney General Letitia James and US Representative Hakeem Jeffries. Both officials emphasized that the United States will not tolerate racism in Guyana or any other country. They also called for an investigation into the myriad of complaints of racism, racial discrimination, government abuse, and police atrocities, which have been alleged by the majority of Guyanese. So far, every single word is fact. Consequently, Minister of Governance Gail Teixeira, Vice President Bharat Jagdeo, and Attorney General Anand Nandlal launched vicious attacks against the organizers, as well as the Attorney General Letitia James and Representative Hakeem Jeffries. Their reckless attacks reflect the conduct of despotic regimes that abhor accountability. Furthermore, we vehemently denounce the PPP regime's uncouth attempt to interfere in the New York elections of Attorney General Letitia James by disseminating false information to her opponent and mobilizing its supporters in Queens, New York, to attack the Attorney General, as well as Congressman Hakeem Jeffries, who is the chairman of the House Democratic Caucus and a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. That is true. That there is now an investigation by the federal government into that. The government's contemptuous attacks on these officials have caused irreparable harm to Guyana and deeply injured race relations in Guyana and the diaspora. We therefore sternly rebuke the PPP regime for the courage of these officials to say that. It was reckless. It did harm race relations. All these PPP's ethnic supporters were in Queens. Not all of them, 17 of them. Good, be back. So let me continue. Moreover, Mr. Sharon Barrett Jagdeo attacked Mr. Burke and the former chairman of the Police Service Commission, Mr. Paul Slow. Their attack perpetuates referring to them as criminals who should not be listened to. Their attacks perpetuate an appalling racist stereotype that is unacceptable in any civilized society. We strongly condemn their abuse of free speech and demonstration of disdain for African Guyanese, who portrayed, let me read that again. We strongly condemn their abuse of free speech and demonstration of, we strongly condemn this abuse of free speech and demonstration of disdain for African Guyanese by the PP government, who portray these gentlemen as criminals simply because they condemn the government's discriminatory practices and policies towards those with whom they have political differences. This is deeply abusive, offensive, and racist. We demand an immediate cessation. Democratic governments embrace investigations of allegations of discrimination and do not oppose denunciation of such social ills. We strongly condemn the government of Guyana's efforts to criminalize African Guyanese leaders and institutions with ridiculous and malicious accusations of libel. The government has crossed the line with its disgraceful falsehoods and slander, which is fueling national outrage and inciting racial hostility. Keep sharing the link. Speaking out against the PP government is becoming increasingly dangerous. Government officials employ unconstitutional coercive tactics, like using the Guyana police force and other ruthless repressive methods to crush and eventually silence those who speak out against their draconian policies. Consequently, the diaspora has emerged as a voice against racism and corruption and resolute advocates against police abuse. Consequently, the PLP government has been committing transnational repressive crimes to harass and silence the diaspora in the United States from speaking out. We are advised that these said crimes are now the subject of an FBI investigation, which we welcome. The government's recently labeling of Black leaders as criminals is racist and offensive to all African Guyanese, as well as to African Americans and the people of African ancestry around the world. Let me pause here. This was absolutely necessary. Barrett Jagdeo, Anil Nanlal, some of the MPs, Gail Teixeira, and others have adopted this racist KKK tactic of calling Black people criminals. And then to complement or to establish this imaginary criminality that they're talking about, they use the Guyana police force to charge people, put out wanted bulletins, to create a perception that black people are criminals. I'll come back to the letter, but let's see who are criminals. I wonder which black Guyanese leader of the opposition was caught in their bedroom or in their basement attempting to collect a $500,000 US bribe, or attempting to extort a Chinese company for $500,000 US. And which PPP official or which black leader collects $500,000 in bribes, which they call a service fee, in their basements or in their bedrooms with Chinese businessmen? I don't know of any. I don't know which black leader was charged and placed before the court for allegedly defrauding the state of Guyana over $270 million, or over $600 million, or over $440 million. And they're calling people criminals. All of this happening in the PPP, you know. The Attorney General was charged with stealing government assets. And they're calling black people criminals. And I'm happy that this group of honorable citizens and organizations representing over 60% of the population have condemned this. And we'll figure out who are the signatories. Get in there. So the government's recent labeling of black leaders as criminals is racist and offensive to all African Guyanese, as well as African people around the world. African Guyanese are the descendants of indomitable slaves who braved the many atrocities and defeated slavery and colonialism. They went on to purchase villages, establish commerce and industry, bartering, as well as a banking system. They pooled their money and bought villages carried in wheelbarrows. Our foreparents were modern equivalent of engineers, medical scientists, bankers, mathematicians, among other worthwhile vocations. And their ingenuity and industry were catalysts for Guyana's development. Hence, contrary to the belief of the PPP government, contrary to the belief of politicians and the PPP government, African Guyanese, black people, and their leaders are not criminals. If the PPP, I'm adding this piece, if the PPP want to see criminals, they must look in the cabinet and in the mirror. African Guyanese currently face discrimination, indignity, inhumane atrocities, subjugation, humiliation, lack of opportunity, unemployment, underdevelopment in their communities, neglect, displacement, discrimination, and marginalization. All supporting their positions of abject poverty. You can't argue with that. The World Bank just said over 41% of the population live under the poverty line. Therefore, the point of discussion is not whether the PPP regime discriminates against blacks and others who do not support the regime, but rather how to address this dreadful atrocity. So PPP, these organizations, these citizens are saying, stop. We're not interested in your denials anymore. We want to know how to correct it. Africans and opposition supporters have had enough of the regime's mendacious, self-serving denials. False, that means denials, with no solution in sight. We demand an immediate resolution to the crisis of racism and racial discrimination in Guyana. Now, that's the letter saying that. Respecting African Guyanese, regardless of their political views, is an imperative to cohesion and stability in Guyana. Let me read that again. Respecting, Barjagdel, I hope you're listening. Orphanali, I hope you're listening. Anil Nanalal, I hope you're listening. Respecting African Guyanese, regardless of their political views, is an imperative to cohesion and stability. That's a fact. African Guyanese must feel free to voice dissent and dissatisfaction on issues that affect them. The PPP government must realize that Guyana is a multi-ethnic state and work towards its transformation to a cohesive, multicultural, multiracial democracy that thrives on the rule of law. Every right-thinking Guyanese should strongly, and I'm reading this letter not because it pertains that my issues in it as well, but it says these issues are important to ventilate. Every right-thinking Guyanese should strongly condemn the wanted bulletins issued by the Guyana Police Force for Rickford Burke, especially since he lives outside of the jurisdiction of the Guyana Police Force in the United States and has violated no laws here in Guyana. Mr. Burke has demonstrated the unique propensities of leadership and is a law-abiding citizen, thus exposing the bulletin as malicious, lacking credibility, devoid of legal basis, and designed to smear his character. That's a fact. We therefore demand that these unlawful bulletins be withdrawn forthwith, as they demonstrate an astounding abuse of power. If they can try to do that to me and I don't live there, could you imagine what they are doing to the people in Guyana? The PPP government discriminates against, and subjugates African Guyanese. And when the affected groups cry out in indignation and pain, the government labels them with derogatory racist names and attempts to lecture the black population, about what is racism and what is discrimination and who they should listen to about being discriminated against. It begs the question, what or who gives the PPP government the authority to dictate to African Guyanese how they must respond to the pains and frustrations of racial discrimination, and who is qualified or unqualified to represent their causes, rights, and interests? Who the hell is the PPP? This is what the letter is saying, to tell black people what is racism and how they must feel and react to racism. Share the link, we get into the bottom of the letter. While the government continues to deny its racist practices, we list here under some of the multitude of cases of current blatant discrimination. 1, in August 2022, Guyana's Attorney General Adel Nanlal issued a statement claiming that it was unlawful for an African Guyanese organization to convene a forum to discuss whether Guyana is an emerging apartheid state. Imagine that. You can't talk no more. It's illegal. His statement was a most dangerous abuse of power and an egregious assault on the rule of law and of Article 146 of the Constitution of Guyana, which guarantees the right to free speech. In a show of brutal power, too, the government has confiscated or attempted to confiscate lands and property of African Guyanese based on an unjustifiable, unlawful, and arbitrary determination by them of illegitimate acquisition. So they just sit down one day and sit down and say, oh, that land them black people got it, they ain't acquired legally, be taking it back. That's a fact. And I noticed they put out C1's son to say he was not discriminated against. He should sit down. He should sit down and stop embarrassing himself. Because I was involved in trying to resolve that issue, and I'm going to talk about that the other day. This obnoxious display of apartheid discrimination, bullyism, and gross abuse of power must end immediately. That's with regard to trying to seize lands. The government's argument that it is not racial or is not racist because we have several blacks in the cabinet, we have black ministers, black heads of department, and the majority of the public service is black, 68%. It is offensive and disingenuous. Decision-making is centered on a cabal in the PPP. African Guyanese ministers are either complicit with the cabal to preserve power or are powerless to curtail the ruthless exploits of hardliners in the government who discriminate against their own people. I put in the last part, discriminate against their own people. The government audaciously uses the Guyana police force to persecute African Guyanese and other political opponents who speak out against racism and corruption. Unfortunately, the presence of an African Guyanese Commissioner of Police offers no insulation from political abuse. The commissioner fully implements the directives of the regime and ensures that the rule of law does not take precedent over the PPP political exploits. Further, the fact that the police commissioner acting as African Guyanese is also irrelevant, as the very commissioner ensures that the force is subservient to the political directorate and carries out the repressive policies against African Guyanese citizens. The cabal clearly exercises absolute power, and it's obvious that the police commissioner concedes his power over to the administration, concedes his power over the administration of the force to the Minister of National Security. This is the nature of apartheid governance. On October 28th, police high-handedly arrested attorney-at-law Tamika Clark after she advised her client that he have the constitutional right to remain silent when questioned by the police. To date, neither the government officials nor any member of the hierarchy of the Guyana police force has bothered to even as regionally and locally by the Guyana Bar Association and the Guyana Women's Lawyers Association, and the government still hasn't acted. Well, going down the line, from the time it has come to power in August 2022, the PPP government directed the Guyana police force to unjustifiably arrest several African Guyanese members of parliament and former APNU government ministers, Guyana Elections Commission officials, former CEOs of the government agencies on what were clearly trumped up charges for political revenge. The regime directed the police to unlawfully break into the home of opposition chief whip Mr. Christopher Jones and arrest him unlawfully, although enjoined from doing so by the Guyana Supreme Court. Today, 2 years later, these cases remain stalled in the courts. There have been no convictions. The cases cannot be prosecuted, cannot move forward in the courts because the Director of Public Prosecutions have no evidence to support these malicious, fabricated charges, but they languish in court. Clearly, the PP government has weaponized the Guyana police force as a sword against personal and political enemies, and corruptly sanctions police corruption to keep segments of the population in check. Lawlessness and abuse by the police is also tolerated by the regime as enforcement to impose ethnic political dominance. The government has terminated black contractors and awarded over 95% of government contracts, totaling hundreds of billions of dollars to its ethnic supporters. Most African Guyanese and all opposition supporters are literally banned from receiving government contracts. Officials then presumptuously and provocatively distribute pictorial evidence of these contract signing to the media in a bold show of ethno-political dominance. That's a fact. And by the way, Nigel Hughes just did a presentation and broke down the amount of money that the government is giving to its ethnic supporters. So that is indisputable. Black-owned businesses operated by opposition supporters and Afro-Guyanese dominated civil society organizations independent of the government, face economic persecution. They're excluded from state contracts. They suffer withdrawal of subvention grants, thereby undermining their economic viability and contribution to society. These organizations include the Guyana, the International Decade of People of African Descent Assembly, Guyana, IPADG, African Cultural Development Association, ACDA, Critchlow Labor College, Car Care Hotels and Motor Vehicles, Sivon's Waste Management. I mean, Sivon's is listed here, but his son is saying something else. And others. The PPP government has also revoked contracts from Black-owned security companies and awarded said contracts to its ethnic supporters. Recently, the government unjustifiably slashed funding for IPADG after Vice President Barrett Jagdeo repeatedly and unfairly attacked its leadership and falsely accused them of misappropriating funds, yet again stereotyping African Guyanese leaders as criminals. The government also defunded ACDA, depriving the organization of much needed financial resources for the staging of the 2022 Emancipation Celebration. However, this same government simultaneously dispersed increased funding for activities hosted by other non-Black cultural organizations. We strongly denounce these mischievous, divisive governance and condemn the government's deplorable efforts to divide Guyanese society by race. Trade union repression in unionized workplace dominated by African Guyanese and opposition supporters is rampant. The right to collective bargaining, as guaranteed in Article 147 of the Guyana Constitution, is under assault by the PPP government. This atrocity requires urgent redress by the international community, as the government refuses to recognize said unions and has been enacting arbitrary wages. Let me read that back. These atrocities require urgent redress by the international community, as the government refuses to recognize said unions and has been acting arbitrarily in increasing wages and granting the working conditions in blatant violation of collective bargaining laws and agreements. The government is persecuting, harassing, and has arrested almost all African Guyanese talk show hosts in Guyana, including Member of Parliament Sherrod Duncan, in violation of the free speech provisions of the Constitution. On November 2nd, 2022, African Guyanese talk show host Kadaki Amsterdam was arrested for using a bullhorn while protesting the government. Despite enjoying said rights while in opposition, the PPP regime unilaterally outlawed such protests when it assumed office, when it was installed in office. These cases, we're talking about the arrests, these while the government and their propagandists drag those falsely and maliciously accused through the mud and portray them as criminals. Again, this whole narrative of portraying Black people as criminals. The government is using the Cybercrime Act to suppress free speech. Fired after being deemed a whistleblower in a matter of senior Guyana Police Force officers. This is in violation of the Public Disclosures Act. This saga requires an international investigation. Getting to the bottom of it. Guyana has degenerated into an autocratic state. The government has directed the police to use both pellets and live bullets in crowd dispersals in an effort to discourage peaceful and lawful protests. We deplore this precipitous slide to dictatorship an official sanction of police brutality. Similarly, the government has been accused of complicity and cover-up of unjustifiable police shootings that were deemed to be murders. And that's a fact. The government tried to cover up or in Boston murder in Essequibo. The government tried to cover up is covering up the Kevin Andrews murder in Grove. The government tried to cover up the Quindon Bacchus murder at Golden Grove. And if those people had not taken to the streets, they would have gotten away with the murder of Quindon Bacchus. The previous PP government allegedly committed hundreds of extrajudicial killings of African Guyanese young men, as well as several political assassinations, including of journalists, from 1998 to 2011 with impunity. There has never been any justice for these victims of this genocide. The audacious perpetrators have not been held accountable. We deplore these heinous killings and reiterate the call for an international investigation, as this matter continues to engender animosity and resentment in the society. Immediately upon its installation in government, the racist regime arbitrarily commenced turning back, expelling and deporting Haitians and Africans from Guyana, including African medical students. They subsequently banned Haitians from entering Guyana under the facade of preventing human smuggling. Further, they arbitrarily enacted a visa requirement for Haitians, which is a flagrantly racist and abominable violation of the revised Treaty of CARICOM Treaty of Chaguaramas. Meanwhile, the government has been welcoming immigrants from South Asian countries, from Cuba, from China, and from Venezuela. Many African Guyanese citizens have complained of unjustifiable omission from the distribution of COVID grants and the flood relief grants. Another detestable act of blatant racial discrimination. By the way, I see the Auditor General has now said that hundreds of millions of dollars are now missing from these cash grants. The government made an additional $250,000 severance pay to Gaisuku workers while refusing to pay public servants, mostly Black or government workers, and a decent increase in salary, even though they promised them 50%. This is another point made here. The government unjustifiably terminated the services of more than 3,000 African Guyanese state employees because of their perceived political affiliation or race, leaving them economically crippled and without the ability to take care of their families. African Guyanese who vociferously denounce the government's discriminatory policies and practices are maligned, are labeled as criminals by a racist gang in the government, and publicly chastised and slandered by government-aligned media entities, Newsroom, and the others. President Orphan Ali boldly attempts to sell this one Guyana mantra amidst blatant injustices and racist triumphalist policies and practices, particularly in the criminal justice system, which relegates African Guyanese and opposition supporters generally to second-class citizenship while inciting resentment and racial hostility. The open vindictiveness of ministers and cabinet members in their ruthless barjak, they were included in the Attorney General and so on, I'm calling their names are not in the letter, in their ruthless pursuit of absolute power, dominance and control over every sphere of national life is dangerous for democracy and the rule of law. It is an existential threat to the African Guyanese population and non-PP supporters in Guyana. Second to last point, the government is deliberately withholding taxpayers' funds from the capital city, Georgetown, other historical African Guyanese villages, towns, local government councils and regions, which it does not govern and which are populated with opposition supporters. This abomination cannot be tolerated. All Guyanese must benefit equally from the resources of our country. Last point, the government is utilizing the nation's oil wealth and the oil and gas sector as if it belongs only to them and their supporters. They indiscriminately dole out billions in contracts to their supporters or or expatriates, while excluding African Guyanese and opposition supporters. Undoubtedly, the PPP government and their supporters are milking the nation's wealth and the nation's patrimony while forcing others to settle for crumbs, others meaning African Guyanese and opposition supporters. This atrocity is generating intense societal resentment and anger and will engender civil disorder. Guyana is in serious crisis, precipitated by racism and corruption. The PPP government has refused to meet with the collective leadership of the African Guyanese and other communities, as well as the parliamentary opposition, to resolve these concerns and to construct a consensus agenda for inclusive governance and the development of Guyana. They are a one-seat majority government in the parliament, governing like an apartheid dictatorship. It is obvious that the PPP government is opposed to leveling the playing field by facilitating opportunities for equitable access to resources for all citizens. They have just rejected equality in the management and distribution of the country's wealth, natural patrimony, and other resources. The policies and practices of the government establish that it does not subscribe to the constitutional principle of equal rights and justice for all. We reject such brutal and oppressive ethnocratic and apartheid PPP governance of our beloved country and people. There must especially be a change in policy to ensure equitable governance, equitable distribution and benefit from the nation's wealth and natural patrimony. We, the undersigned, hereby call on the United States government, the United States Congress and the Congressional Black Caucus, CARICOM heads of government, ABC countries, the United Nations, Commonwealth, Organization of American States, African Union, and all African heads of government. The untenable crisis of racism and corruption in Guyana. Sorry, we call attention to the untenable crisis of racism and corruption in Guyana. We propose an urgent Washington, D.C. conference on Guyana's future to ventilate and resolve the matters laid out herein. Now, this is the important part. That's the letter. They said that only Rickford Burke and the people in New York believe this. Well, here were the signatories. Vince Roy Jordan, Member of Parliament and Vice Chairman of the PNC. Darren Wade, Attorney at Law. Darren Adams, Regional Chairman, Region 10, Upper Demerara Berbice. Sherwin Holder, Member of Parliament, Chairman of the People's National Congress. International Decade for People of African Descent and Assembly in Guyana. Christopher Jones, Member of Parliament and Opposition Chief Whip. Coretta MacDonald, AA, Member of Parliament, President of the Guyana Trades Union Congress, General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union. Joycelyn DeYoung, Community Workers, that's an organization, I guess. Roysdale Ford, Member of Parliament and Shadow Attorney General. Nima Flubes, Member of Parliament. Elton McRae, 8th of Day Movement. Pandit Ubraj Narain, His Worship the Mayor of Georgetown. Sister Panda Gayan, Guyana Day Association. Reverend Dr. Rudy Gayan, Forum for the Temple of African Spirituality. Atricia Smith, community organizer. Leslie Gonzalez, trade unionist. Ganesh Mahipal, Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Local Government. Amanza Walton Desir, Member of Parliament, Shadow Minister of Foreign Affairs. Althea Wade, community leader. Ann Mars, community leader. Roberta Ray, community leader. Esther Herman, community leader. These are community leaders from different regions. Wanda Casey, community leader. Carita Wright, community leader. Vashni Watts, community leader. T.M. McFarlane, chairman, Union Union Neighborhood Council, that's Region 5, I think. Sandra James, Community Leader, Region 5. Vanessa Simon, Community Leader, Region 5. Hurston Spencer, Community Leader. Nilon Spencer, Community Leader. Sorry, Neil Spencer, Community Leader. Caroline Bruce Williams, Community Leader. Elaine London, Community Leader. Christopher Williamson, Community Leader. Abiola Stanley, Community Leader. Marjorie Webster, Community Leader. Oliver Lynn, Community Leader. Leslie Rollins, Community Leader. Rhonda Wayne, Community Leader. Petal Roberts, Community Leader. Cyril Adams, Community Leader. Sandra Rowan Adams, Community Leader. Fitzroy Thomas, Community Leader. Faye Rodney, Community Leader. Then you have organizations again. Guyana Organizations Against Racism, that's in New York. People's National Congress Reform. North American Region. Guyana Action Committee. Black Lives Matter Brooklyn. Guyana Unity Movement. Anything Guyanese. APNU North American Support Group. AFC Brooklyn. Sisters on the Move. Bartica Diaspora United. Guyana Veterans Association. Center for Guyana's Development. Guyana DJs Promotion. One Guyana USA. Progressive Guyanese American Organization. Guyana Association of America. Rebuild Guyana. Guyana East Coast Connection. Aubrey C. Norton, Member of Parliament, Leader of the People's National Congress, Leader of the Opposition of Guyana. Nigel Hines, political and civil society activist. Gordon Dummett, Community Leader. Ruth MacDonald, United Nations Association of Guyana. Tabitha Sabro Haley, Member of Parliament, former Minister of Local Government in the Granger administration. Uriel Simon, Community Leader. Lincoln Lewis, General Secretary, Guyana Trade Union Congress. Leon Saul, former Lieutenant Colonel, retired. Takuma Ugunse. John Toll, National Union of Public Service Employees. Dear Narayan Ramroop, Member of Parliament. Executive Member of the AFC. William Dalgetty, Pan-African Movement. Viola McGregor, Community Leader. Cheryl Clark, Community Leader. Jaipal Sharma, JP, former Minister of the Government within the Ministry of Finance and within the Ministry of Agriculture. Pastor Nigel London, Leader of the People's Movement. Everybody knows Pastor London, he has a talk show. And Don Cush, knee holder, attorney at law, former director of the Competitive Consumer Associations Commission, Consumer Affairs Commission, and former magistrate of the Judiciary of Guyana. Those are just some. Oh, by the way, sorry. Mr. Kamraj Ramjatan, MP, attorney at law, member of parliament, leader of the Alliance for Change. Those are some of the signatories. I am not sure how the government is going to handle this and how they can spin this and say, oh, it's a bunch of racist black people in Brooklyn. That's not going to work. That is not going to work. So there you go. Now, in response to this letter today, Prime Minister of the House Slave Mark Phillips issued a statement attacking Mr. Saul, who signed the cover letter to Kamala Harris. Oh, he was incompetent, he's a soldier, he was at housing, and he didn't do a good job. Prime Minister, Mr. Mark Phillips, we're not interested in that crap. Stop allowing yourself to be used as a house slave on steroids. That's not how you respond to this. The world is watching you. This news is all over the Caribbean. We're not interested in if Mr. Saul was a competent housing executive, chief executive of the Guyana Housing Authority. Y'all let her know. Fix whatever problem it is. And don't boast about how much house lots y'all give people. Because those house lots don't have the infrastructure for housing to be built right away. Y'all just giving people a lot. And furthermore, that's your job. We don't want to hear how much house lots you give out. That's what governments are for, to serve the people. You're not doing a favor. What we're saying is that you're discriminating against people. In other words, when you give 20 of your supporters a house lot, you give one black person or one opposition supporter. We don't want to hear the smoke screens anymore. That's Bar Jagdev static. Attack, 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 attack. Find solutions. That's what the people are saying, Mark Phillips. Find solutions. Everybody that talks about the rampant racism of the government, you guys have to attack. This is not communist Russia. Sit down with people. Find out what are their concerns. Who the hell are you guys to tell the opposition that they can fulfill their constitutional mandate by engaging the government? You guys are pushing the country to civil war. That's a fact. And don't turn the argument around because we're making the observation that you guys are fanning the flames of racial hostility by painting black people as criminals. The letter saying, cut it out. And it seems as though you all are not mature enough to confront these problems and sit down and dialogue and talk to them. That's why the signatories have to go to the CARICOM heads and the United States Black Caucus, Congressional Black Caucus, and the Vice President. Why are you upset now? That's what you all did to win the elections, to be installed. You're run to the international community. Do something like so. That's the reality you must confront. So don't attack Leon Saul because he wrote a letter. We want solutions. We don't give a damn how effective he was as a Guyanese Defense Force Ghana Defense Force officer. How effective you are as a prime minister. What you do? What the hell has Mark Phillips achieved for the Guyanese people since he's prime minister? Let's look at that. If you think you did something, that's where you should lay out. Don't be a house slave. The government is using you. They run and put out a black man to cuss people, say, oh, the government is not racist. The government is racist. That's a fact. You're discriminating. Nothing in the letter is contestable. Nothing. Is the government using the Guyana police force? Why don't you ask the Guyana police force why they're putting out unlawful wanted bulletins for me? And don't come and tell me they got evidence. Because we have every single shred, and I've been saying that for months, every single shred of evidence. And there's nothing implicated me, nothing. But they put out a wanted bulletin. Why? Because they want to come back and use it as a reference point. Oh, Rickford Burke is a criminal. The police has a wanted bulletin. Well, y'all come and get me. It is ridiculous. That's exactly what they did. They proved who are by coming out and attacking Mr. Saul. Like if Mr. Saul doesn't have a right to free speech, only PUP alone people get a right to free speech. And you don't expect to have civil unrest when all you do is brutalize people, use the Guyana police force to, and let me say this to police officers, y'all stop following illegal instructions. Y'all stop following this racist regime who is using the police to enforce ethnic dominance in the country. And Kikin and Blanham and all these people are tools, oppressive tools of the regime. All with questionable characters, all. The police commissioner headed, the acting commissioner, this same man here, this same fella right here now, this short man, headed a team of police officers that gunned down protesters at Linden and killed them, murdered them, and he has never been held accountable. And now he's jumping around. The PUP has the nerve to put him as police commissioner and turn him against black people again. And he happily does it because he wants the power. He should be in jail. He should be in jail. Bladder was removed as crime chief because of corruption. They brought him back. Every single person in the state apparatus that they could use against their political opponents, which includes the black population. That's what they use. Let's look at the Guyana Police Force. Almost every single head of department and important division is headed by an Indian. But they like to say, oh, the Guyana Police Force is about 70% or 60% black. But who controls the command? That's apartheid. That's apartheid. The public services, 80%. Who controls, who makes the decision? A cabal. That's apartheid governance. And they're trying to make the country into Russia. Soon you say something, the police gone with you. Watch and see, they're going to try to harass some of the people who signed this letter, but I dare them. Enough is enough. I agree with the signatories of this letter. I agree with it. And I'm told that the United States government will act. And my position is, if they can't come into compliance with democratic norms, force them out of government. Force them out of government. I make no qualms about the international community must not tolerate a racist apartheid regime in Guyana. I like the line of the letter. They crossed the line. The fact that these racists in the PPP could attack the Attorney General of New York because what? She called for an investigation into the racism. They must get investigated. And all of this is Barrett Jagdeo. All of this is Barrett Jagdeo. Jump up and said, I'm a con artist, I con Indian business. Well, Barrett Jagdeo, you taught me in school and you're an expert at conning. So I guess if I con, you teach me it. Again, like I said, I was never caught in my bedroom by international journalists trying to hustle a $500,000 US bribe from a Chinese company or extorting $500,000 from a Chinese company. You were. Barrett Jagdeo was. He was caught in his basement or his bedroom or wherever he was, trying to hustle. And he's talking about, oh, Rickford Burke, he's a con artist. I own 2 houses in Brooklyn, in New York State, and I could account for them. Somebody who we talking about on a 500, on a house worth hundreds of millions of dollars by a seaside somewhere on the East Coast, and he can't say we pay for it. Bribe money. That's what they say, bribe money. I don't know. Somebody got some house by the East Coast, so. And you want to call people con artists. It's time to turn up the pressure. The United States government must deliver for the people of Guyana, for African Guyanese and the people of Guyana under subjugation and oppression, East Indians, Amerindians who don't support the government. And I've been on for a long time. I need to wrap this up. And this document, I want to encourage people to keep signing it. Go in the thousands and sign this document, Guyanese. Find out in Guyana. I'll find out where the people could go and keep signing. Keep signing this document. It's important. This is the time to stand up. Rise up and let your voice be heard. Stand up for your rights. Stand up for equity. Stand up for equal justice. Stand up for equal benefit from the oil and gas, wealth, and natural patrimony of the country. Stand up to the Guyana Police Force. Stand up and demand accountability from this government. This is the time for stand up. That's what the people who signed this letter did. Stood up. And it's historic, it's unprecedented. And the United States government and the rest of the world will have to respond. That's all I have for tonight. I want to thank you for joining me, and stay tuned. Stay tuned. What they have attempted there by attacking these U.S. officials and going to their opponents and giving money and whatever. I mean, the FBI is going to find out what happened. I'm not going to get involved in that. But we can't allow these people to be taking our oil money to run in and contribute to influence elections in America because somebody called for an investigation and say that racism should not be tolerated in Guyana. No, no. As the letter said, they crossed the line. They crossed the line. Thank you guys very much for listening. I was trying to get back the, I'm a little technologically challenged here. But thanks a lot for listening. Tune in again next Sunday. And I want to wish everybody happy Thanksgiving tomorrow. If you're in the United States, happy Thanksgiving. Happy Gobble Gobble Day. I don't eat turkey, so I'm going to eat fish. So have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, everybody. Have a blessed night. If you're in the United States, it's cold. One love. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.